When the shotgun went off under Johnnie Birchall's brother's chin, word had it the top of his head came off like the top of a turnip lantern. Then it got stuck, by means of a jagged triangle of bone, into the upholstery of the roof of the Land Rover. A thing like that spreads around. The story, I mean, not the head. I just turned 16. It was 1993. Man, that was a great year. Well, a big year. The girls wouldn't start at our school until the next September, which seemed pretty exciting at the time, but actually that would turn out to make life slightly less fun, rather than more. Or at least it would for me. I was from Edinburgh, and I'd been to a day school before, so I knew girls already. As a concept, at least. Some of the other guys had been boarding since they were 7, though, and had basically never spoken to a woman who they weren't related to. Not that you'd always have realised this to meet them. I mean, you would with some, like wee Geordie Meehan, who went beetroot even when he spoke to the cleaners. Others, though, were as confident as anything, although in that particular boarding school way, which often meant talking about wanking a lot, or putting their cocks on your shoulder from behind when you're working in the library. In retrospect, I guess some of them were just lonely, because their parents were in places like Dubai. Still, time does not heal. It was a couple of weeks before Easter, anyway, when they found Johnnie's brother, Douglas. He'd been in the Land Rover, which had gone over the edge of the ravine in the rabbit field, but they reckoned he'd been dead already. Gun between the knees, wheel goes into a pothole, brains go on the roof. He was 19. Stupid way to die. No way, said Alan when I told him at ice skating. We nearly did that last month. Johnnie and me, and Barf, and this guy from the farm called Dean. Barf was driving, I was in the back with the gun, hugging the thing. We nearly went into the same ravine. It came out of nowhere. How does a ravine, I managed to ask, come out of nowhere? Alan said it was dark and they were stoned, which was actually a really good answer. I didn't know Johnnie all that well back then, but I knew he always had drugs. Alan said it had been 3 a.m. and they were properly baked, the tingly way you get with that chalky hash they ship in at Leith, which Alan said had been packaged with acid. When you close your eyes and it's all marching ants, and all the sound goes weird, and you might as well be a dude on a boat. And Barf had been driving because he also lived in the countryside and had known how since he was 12. He'd asked Johnnie what the dip was up ahead, and Johnnie had said, nothing much, and Barf had only realised at the last minute that Johnnie was totally wrong. OK, I said, but that's not all that similar, because Douglas was by himself. Well, that's what I heard from Chobber from Glenarmond, who heard it from Nellie, who got it from Marcus's dad because he's mates with Fusty's family, and they're next door. Still stoned, though, aye? Said Alan. Aye, I said, in a familiar sort of way, even though Chobber hadn't mentioned whether Douglas had been stoned or not, and I'd hardly smoked that much hash yet myself. Really, I hadn't spoken to Alan much more than I had to Johnnie by that point, apart from making him laugh once in maths by telling him that when Mrs. Elson got cross, she looked like Chewbacca having an orgasm. I found Alan a bit intimidating. He wore Doc Martens instead of school shoes and had quite long hair. Also, he had something impressive going on with art. I longed to be like that, although I didn't know how. All that, though, was about to change. These days, I feel like I don't know anything. Not about life, or about Scotland, or my own place in either of them. I don't mind admitting that. Who does? Back then, though, I knew it all. Or I was about to. You know that thing you have when you're a wee kid and getting bigger, and you start to think there's another world out there where everything is better and more exciting, and all the people are more attractive and interesting and better in every way. Well, I had that, and I was right, and soon I'd be in it. And it all started the week after, at the best party I'd ever been to, at least so far. Since then, I've probably been to better, although not for a while.